I'm Logan Sauter, and this is Crash Course U.S. History. In mid-19th century America, new states were being added to the Union all the time. This created a lot more tensions regarding the debate over slavery, and the nation was split over whether or not slavery should extend westward. The Wilmot Proviso Bill stated that there should be no more slavery in the new territories. However, this bill quickly died in the Senate. What replaced this bill was the Compromise of 1850. It consisted of 5 different components, and it prevented the adoption of the Wilmot Proviso Bill. One of those was the statehood for California, another was the territorial status for Utah and New Mexico, resolving a boundary dispute between Texas state and New Mexico territory, and it adopted a new fugitive slave law. It also abolished the slave trade within the District of New Mexico.
The Compromise of 1850 allowed slavery in the Utah and New Mexico territories. This nullified the previously established Missouri Compromise line.
In the end, California entered the Union as a free state because that's what its citizens elected to.
The Kansas-Nebraska Act was introduced by Stephen Douglas in order to overcome the sectionalism that still existed after the Compromise of 1850. The act was based upon popular sovereignty, allowing the people in a territory to decide on their domestic policies, which went against the Missouri Compromise. Though the act passed Congress, southern states had already started to secede after Kansas was granted statehood.
One example of this is when Preston Brooks, a pro-slavery congressman, beat Senator Charles Sumner over the head with a cane after Sumner gave a speech attacking the Democratic administration regarding slavery. Sumner never fully recovered, and Brooks was sent numerous canes to replace the one he broke. This incident reflected the growing passions of both parties.
Mr. Green, how did the fugitive slave laws coincide with the Compromise of 1850?
Well, me from the past who looks an awful lot like Scott, the Compromise of 1850 instituted a new, stricter fugitive slave law. This caused many slaves to escape to parts of not America and not America. One way many slaves escaped was through the Underground Railroad. Insert a bad joke about trains here. The Underground Railroad included a chain of people that hid slaves during their escape to the north. The system increased a sectionalist divide, reinforcing the Southern conspiracy that Northerners would stop at nothing to free their slaves. Another event that increased tension over slavery was the Harper's Ferry incident. John Brown, an abolitionist, and his sons overtook an armory in order to arm slaves for a violent revolt. However, he was unsuccessful because there were no slaves there to support him.
I deserve to have slaves because they are my property. I need them to survive economically.
Slavery is unjust and should be removed immediately.
No, it doesn't.
We are the lions, we are the chosen, we're gonna shine out the dark.
Wow, can you believe about horse slavery?
Wow, slavery should not expand. Have you seen this book?
What is this? This is Northern propaganda.
Anti-slavery sentiment in the North began to spread in large part due to pieces of literature. For example, Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote an anti-slavery novel professing her point of view on slavery. Uncle Tom's Cabin became the most selling novel in the 19th century. One slave named Dred Scott attempted to sue his master, John Sanford, for his freedom after he was taken into a free state. However, the Supreme Court said slaves could not sue because they were considered property and could never gain citizenship. And now for the mystery document.
The next question propounded to me by Mr. Lincoln is, can the people of a territory in any lawful way, against the wishes of any citizen of the United States, exclude slavery from their limits prior to the formation of a state constitution? I answer empathetically, as Mr. Lincoln has heard me answer 100 times from every stump in Illinois, that in my opinion, the people of a territory can, by lawful means, exclude slavery from their limits prior to the formation of a state constitution. Mr. Lincoln knew that I had answered that question over and over again. He heard me argue the Nebraska bill on that principle all over the state in 1854, in 1855, and in 1856. And he has no excuse for pretending to be in doubt as to my position on that question. It matters not what way the Supreme Court may hereafter decide as to the abstract question whether slavery may or may not go into a territory under the Constitution. The people have the lawful means to introduce it or exclude it as they please. For the reason that slavery cannot exist a day or an hour anywhere unless it is supported by local police regulations. Those police regulations can only be established by local legislature. And if the people are opposed to slavery, they will elect representatives to that body who will, by unfriendly legislation, effectively prevent the introduction of it into their midst. If, on the contrary, they are for it, their legislation will favor its extension. Hence, no matter what the decision of the Supreme Court may be on that abstract question, still the right of the people to make a slave territory or a free territory is perfect and completely under the Nebraska bill. I hope Mr. Lincoln deems my answer satisfactory at that point.
Is this the Compromise of 1850? No? The correct answer was Stephen A. Douglas said this to Abraham Lincoln during the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Douglas stated that, in spite of the Dred Scott decision, slavery should be included or excluded based on popular sovereignty doctrine. Also, this isn't a real shock, man. From the past, who still looks a lot like Scott? Yes and no. The election of 1860 caused an uproar in the South because Abraham Lincoln, the victor, opposed slavery. Because of this, southern states, the first being South Carolina, there's no map up there, threatened to secede. The election increased sectionalism and tension in the nation. These feelings have been boiling since the country's founding, far before Lincoln's victory. To find out what we're doing next week, check your pacing guide.